I think I fall under the category of an abstract expressionist. And for me, everything that I paint is what is happening in my life at that moment, on any level. And it's also that way of me processing what I'm doing in my life and how life is affecting me, et cetera, et cetera. So I use the line that everything's a self-portrait, and every painting is a part of that portrait. That may not be the way other people see that, but that's certainly where I start. And it's generally pretty much emotional. I'm not worried about detail or likeness. I'm worried about following the line that's running through me at the time, and it doesn't really matter what color it is or what line it is. It's, if I can catch it, I put it down, and that's pretty much it. It's like the worst career path you can have is to be an abstract expressionist. So every once in a while you've got to do something realistic, or has subject matter so people understand that you really can paint other things because they're not sure. People that don't do abstracts are not sure you can paint at all. So yeah, you have to feed the kitty every once in a while. I just follow what the nudges are, and I don't even know where I'm going. So it's like being lost, you know? You're just trying to find the path. As I walk into something, I pick up a book that I know some woman has given her husband, in 1925, and there's these remarkable images from a culture I'll never get to touch, and yet can influence me so strongly that I'm willing to set up for, 14 nights cutting patterns so I can make images, that won't even come near what they do. And I think we have all walked into that, but we never name it. We always dismiss it. We let it go, where it could have been just the handle on the door, and we didn't open it. And I have many, many friends now who have walked through that door, and and when you talk to them, it's a different, it's a different kind of conversation, because anything's possible. My father was a coal miner, and for some reason the miners had a Father's Sunday, which I think is pretty funny, considering what he did. But I went with him for half a day and found out what he did, and it really scared me. That this man was underground, hunched over, barely able to roll his back 4 feet high, shoveling coal with a bicart lamp on his head. And it was scary. It was just really scary. And we went outside for lunch, and after lunch, I was going to go back to school. Of course, I had to go home and take a bath and so forth. But he just said, you've got choices. You can work here, or you can go to college. I grew up on a street where I had 44 kids to play with. And we were literally on the wrong side of the tracks. But there were like 23 nationalities on that street. So you got food, opinions, customs, a lot of rich, overlapping kinds of things. And I had a 5th grade teacher teach us how to do perspective. 1, 2, and 3 point. And I thought that was absolutely amazing, that there was a way for me to show the world in 3 dimensions. And I would draw those things. I would draw our kitchen. I would draw the house. I would draw the porch. I would draw anything I could in perspective. But there were a lot of old farmhouses that were empty. And it wasn't unusual for a gang of us to go to these places, clean them up, and paint them inside. And I would paint on the walls. I would paint murals on the walls. And I think I got used to just letting go on those walls and painting whatever I felt like. She rounded up 11 of us in the school and got us into the class together. I don't know how she managed that. And it wasn't the ordinary art class. She finally got a chance to open up and push us as well as use what she had. And that was probably a gift art-wise. And probably it wasn't until I was teaching did I realize, how much she had and how much she offered. But when I did go to college and I had to make a decision, I remembered I was standing in the gym and there were all these tables for all the different curriculums. And I'm standing there looking at them and I'm going, mathematics? No. No. And I'm just going, no. History? Maybe. And I saw the art table. Went over and signed up. And of course it shocked my dad because he thought, what is he going to do for the rest of his life? But when I told him it was teacher education, he sort of, breathed a little bit and went, okay, he's going to have a job. So I was there for 2 weeks and I wrote to my school and told them I wasn't coming back. So we jumped in my Volkswagen bus when school was out and took off. I stayed and lived there for about 2 years with a Mexican family, went to school, got my MFA. I had some really good teachers who were also mentoring. I had them for painting and I had them for murals. And he was pivotal in my life, in my art, more than anything. Him stirring the pot sort of pushed me in my teaching, in my art, in my thinking, in my exploring. He was sort of a catalyst at a really prime time for me. And I used to go off course a lot. And he would talk to me about, you can play out there, but you need a few more, real skills before you can go out there and play effectively. And he would tend to lead me back or advise me to go take this class or that class or this. And you had to sit at this wall. Literally, that's what he called it. You have to sit with your wall. And we had to draw the light that was changed on it all day long. He wanted to know where the lines were. And then when you'd turn in your design, he would ask you to show him what it looked like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So you had to know your shadows, you had to know, it was pretty intense. And then he assigns me the wall, and it is the worst wall you could ever get. It was in a outdoor walkway between 2 buildings. It was like 8 feet. Well, no one can see the whole wall in 8 feet when you can't back up far enough. And he would just screw with your mind that way because you were at a place where you needed to learn something and he knew what he was after, and he would just sort of push you into these confinements that you would just have to force yourself to deal with those issues. I ended up loving the guy. he was wonderful. One day he came over and whatever I was doing, he got on my back again. And I don't know why at this particular time, I just got ticked off at him. And I just took the canvas and threw it against the wall. I picked up all my paint and I just whipped them at the wall, everything. And I just walked out and said, you can stuff these things. You know, I'm done. I just walked out. He would just ask you questions, you know, and he'd walk around the studio and he'd come over, and the favorite one was, who told you to paint that green? And when he first started doing that, I'm going, what do you mean, who told me to paint that green? Is it wrong? You know, should I change it? He just asked the question, you know, and he just left you out there floundering, trying to figure out what he's alluding to. You know, what were you supposed to do with this? And it took a while for me to realize that he was asking you, look inside. Who told you to paint that green? Get connected to what you're doing. He would do a lot of that. And I don't know if it was because he knew the family or whatever, but he had me show up in his studio at night, and this man could paint. I mean, God, we were all, you know, in awe of what he could do. And I sat in his studio, just sat while he painted. And my job was to ask questions, you know? And he made me do that for about 3 weeks. After my classes and everything else were over, I went and I sat in his studio, and sometimes 4 or 5 hours. You know, skip dinner, forget that. You know, you're here to ask questions. I ran out of money. I sold my clothes to get home from Mexico. I went out looking for a job, and as luck would have it, the school I used to work with in Pittsburgh called me up and said, we'd like you to come back. I taught 4 years in public school, and he called me up and he said, you need to apply for a job here because they need rabble-rousers. And I taught 32 years at the university. That I wanted to run an art education program differently than the one I went through. And the other part, ironically, was that I wanted the freshman color and design class because I knew I wanted to make that a human course. I wanted that information to be really personal. And I wanted to know if I could condense it into a semester so that I could get those kids started, so that, because I was going to have to see them later on, I wanted that in there real early on. There was this group of kids that were so bright and needed an avenue to put something together so that all of their energies and their skills could be put right back into the classes. So we wanted to infiltrate their history classes and all the other stuff with what they could bring to it, as well as what they could absorb from the teachers. And I took a lot of abuse for thinking like that. But the college kids loved it. And I was getting all kinds of flack from my fellow teachers. And it really got nuts when the kids came in one day and brought in a sweatshirt and a hat and a whistle. And my sweatshirt said, "Meaningful Existence Coach." We had our first class was like 27 kids. And those 27 kids became as much a part of organizing teaching as we did. And we would be up till 2 o'clock in the morning with 15 kids working in the department. It was not teacher-student. we were all in this together and we were building this, you know, and if someone had a better idea, we'd explore it. And out of that, we built a really, really strong personal department. And it scared the old guys who taught there because we were going by first names. And there were a group of teachers on that campus, and we had met secretly and had established a pact that when you ran into a kid that was operating not only on an intellectual base, but on a real strong emotional base, that he was seeing the world differently, but that it was really worthy of notice, that this kid is one of them. We would just send a note with the kid and say, take this to Mr. So-and-so. And it just said, this is one. And, you know, and it would alert the teacher, you know, I'm going to pay some different kind of attention to this guy and give him ways to do the assignments or whatever. If the state recognized you as a teacher of merit, not only did you get a bonus, but you got one free space in the spring semester that you could name it for yourself, a Maverick course. You could teach anything you wanted. And I went for some pretty off-the-map kinds of things. Well, what's really nice is that gets fed back to the state by the deans. You know, this guy is doing something, da, da, da. It comes back, I get another merit class. So I get another Maverick class, you know, that I can try something else. And I just kept trying something else. And it didn't even have to be in your own department. You know, it could be anywhere. It could just be a loose cannon. That's one of the reasons I stayed. I had enough time in, you know, I was tenured. I had done enough crazy stuff that they knew the way I worked and that I was hopeless. They weren't going to change it. And that I would get pats on the back from the state, which would give me time to keep doing what I was doing. I mean, I was working really hard, but I loved it because of the kids. It's been in the last 20 years since I've been in Washington that, you know, the work's happened. So the rest of it was just priming the pump. The first time a woman that owns a gallery here in Olympia walked by and said, do you want a show? Someone else saw my work and the next gallery said, would you like to show here? And that just kept. And it went from here to Seattle to Santa Fe to San Diego to Mexico and back, you know, so luck, sheer luck. And all the gallery owners were women, which is another thing I wanted. They were much easier to deal with. They were more aware in ways about what the artist was doing. And they asked different questions. Yeah, the money was involved and productivity was involved. Those things weren't skipped. It was that the way the questions were phrased, that you had a lot of room they gave you a lot of room to be who you were and not saying, oh, well, we need 20 of these in red. It's like, yeah, like that's never going to happen with me. I want this to look like a group show. I don't want people to walk in and see 40 landscapes, all done in the same style, because you see a lot of that. You know, this is what this guy does, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't work that way. I said, I want them to think it's a group show. You know, that it changes media subject. You know, I want them to be surprised that there's something else happening, or that there's more than one thing to look at. I'm in it for the juice of painting, and then after that it becomes, oh yeah, you got to show these and you got to put a price on them and all that sort of thing. But it never was the motivating force. I'm not a good businessman in that sense of the word. And what has allowed me to succeed has been luck. Falling in your lap. People said, would you like a show? And I'm going, yeah. You know, and someone would see it and they say, oh, I saw your work there. Would you like to show here? And it has just done that for decades. So I really didn't need to fight for it. And because I wasn't doing it for the money, you know, rejection wasn't any big deal. It's like, okay, that's fine, you know. I'm still going to paint regardless. And because of that, I think I have had a great amount of luck with gallery owners, because I wasn't frantic about getting into their gallery or selling in their gallery or anything else. And luck. I have no other word for it. Luck. I'll paint something right up to the end, hang it on my wall and live with it for a week or something, and I'll walk by it and go, God, you know, I think that needs, I should never listen. Should never listen. Inevitably, that thing is going to be white. Inevitably, you know, it's going to be white. Because I'm going to piddle instead of going with the whole concept of what created that piece. I'm going in and doing this kind of stuff. And it always leads to disaster for me, and I should know it by now. But sometimes I'm just, you know, I'm just taken in and I'm gone. Yeah, it's like, write it off, you know. Thousands of those. No, I mean, you know, you can have something going really well, and you pick up a brush, you know, 3 inches wide, and you think, oh, this would work there, and you put it on, and you go, oh God, it's not right, you know. And you almost can't take it off. So you have to figure out a way to go back into it, to paint it, to make it work, and before you know it, you have a whole different painting going on, and what you had is gone. And if you didn't photograph it, it's never coming back. At least for me, it's like I can't go back there. You know, you have to keep moving forward. And sometimes I just get ticked off and paint it white. Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I'm not going to do this. This is too big of a fight. I'll just paint over it. And I have people come in and scream that I'm painting over it. And it's like, you have no idea what it would take for me to fight this thing to get it to a place where I would be happy again. It's easier just to paint over it. So some days you spend a lot of days in the studio and you end up with a white canvas again. So yeah, that's the price. I just like playing around with stuff, you know, that you walk by something and you never know. It's like the painting on the wall behind you is basically based upon Aboriginal paintings they found on rocks in Australia. Because I'd found a little book in a bookstore downtown for $4, and I opened it up and the pages are yellowed and brown. It's from the 20s. and some woman had given it to her husband for his birthday. And I opened it up, and it's accordioned, and there are images about 3 inches square of these rock paintings. But it was so small, you couldn't even see them. So I scanned them, enlarged them, scanned them, enlarged them, scanned them, enlarged them, until I could get them up to a size where I could really see what was going on. And when you get there, there is such a sensitivity to the figures. I could not believe it. They were so skilled about how they indicated movement, running, fishing. And these were on rocks, you know. I mean, I became totally obsessed. I would be up till 4 o'clock in the morning trying to do that, you know, until I got something that might be close. And then I started making prints out of them and painting into them and collaging with them and doing everything I could with these things. No one wanted to see them. When I looked through the book, and I told you about that, I became so enamored by the images and blowing them up. Well, I had made, I took the foam that they put under flooring now, that it's a thin foam, and it's the under piece under the wood floors. It's so easy to cut with a pair of scissors. And because you can cut it out, you can ink both sides of it so you can reverse the image when you want to print it. So I cut out tons of those based upon the rock drawings, the rock paintings, the Australian rock paintings. And then I just started playing with building them up and painting into them and painting over them and adding anything that just came by. And most of them looked like they were about hunting or fishing. So the figures sort of developed the theme because of what they were doing and what was around them. And the women were generally more static. The men always were carrying spears or something, or fish in their hands or whatever. So it was blending those two things and telling a story by the images that I had available. And when I blew them up, I started seeing that there were really beautiful things being done. Like you would have a character running, and I have no idea what they're wearing clothing-wise, but there would be like almost a geometrical, it could have been a clothing, it could have been something around their neck, I don't know. But it was there. But you could see the genitals always showed, and the feet always turned up in a way that you knew they were running, even though they didn't draw the feet. The arms and the hands were formed in a way that you could tell the strength and the movements. Turning the heads to indicate directions of things. There were just a lot of subtleties, even down to the fish and the turtles, which they seem to have a lot of. I guess the book represented where I was with ever seeing Aboriginal art. You know, I looked at this, the book was this size, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, those are nice. And then I blew it up, and it was like someone coming in and say, this is what you don't know. And there was this whole beautiful story being told. And it just took over. I remember setting up with that green foam till like 5 in the morning, cutting out these things because I couldn't wait to get started to print them. And I probably was obsessed for like a week. I just I wouldn't sleep, I'd eat, then run back out to the studio and keep going. But I did probably 14 pieces, big pieces. And I had them on my wall in my house for a long time. And then finally, I conned Susie into letting me put them in a show. And I've got one left. That's it on the wall. So I go everywhere. That's what I mean. I don't know what the driving force is going to be. And right now it's digital stuff. And I know it's not going to last long, but while it's here, I'm going to produce as much as I can. There was a lot of discussion about whether they were legitimate, I think. I'm not sure that's the word, but it seemed to be that there were people that thought that me doing digital paintings was somehow a violation of some code that isn't mine, obviously, or I wouldn't be doing it. But I'm glad the discussion came out because it gave me a chance to state where I was, and that basically I was going to do whatever I wanted to do in whatever media I wanted to do it in, because it was my pleasure, not theirs. And I'm getting some really good images. 20 times better than the original photograph. And there is a weather component to it. When it starts getting cold, the energy to paint increases. When spring comes around, the energy picks up again. And right now, because I've had 3 pretty big shows close together, it sort of wiped me out. Like, I'm not real fond about going to the studio right now. So I have been playing on my computer and learning how to do things digitally, just as amusement. But it's also paying off because I'm getting some images that are really quite attractive for me. And it's like, so I'm building a new skill, I guess. So I'm in the studio. And I also noticed that in the winter, the subject matter will go more towards abstractions. And in the spring, you'll see landscapes come up more, probably because of the season. And color changes, I notice. They get moodier in the fall. It's about a pond, and it's about returning to it. It's about the one over there, it's all reds and impressionistic, and there's another one over here on the wall that they're all about going back to this place that in reality I don't know where that is. But somewhere within me there is, that pond represents some kind of space that's really important, and I have gone back to that over and over again, probably for 10 years. It just, a pond painting just happens today. It's like, I didn't plan it, it's just, we're talking about this again. I think it's in your head, like you have a thought about something, and that's sort of how it happens with the landscapes. And then there are others that are just because of light. Hiking by a stream and lights hitting the waters and the rocks, and you're just sort of taken by it, and you can't wait to play with the light. And you're not even painting the place you were at. You just need to paint with that idea in mind, or feeding you. That painting came from me deliberating some really heavy things that were going on. And they were about my marriage, about health, world politics. There were just all of these things seemed to be coming in at the same time. And it was pretty heavy to carry at that time. I had gone to the studio like after dinner or something, which wasn't unusual, but I'd never painted birds before. And all of a sudden, the muses in the studio, the guys that generally showed up in my head to help me sort out whatever was coming, sort of nudged me towards, there wasn't like there was a specific idea, but there was an energy and a feeling that was going on with the paint. And so I just kept pushing it. And all of a sudden I don't know what it is, a swan, a duck, I don't know what it is. I don't know birds. But this bird showed up with all of these things flying around it. Smaller birds and things that look like, I don't know, intergalactic red things. I don't know what they are. But I realized what I was doing was processing my own sense of gloom. And what came out of that gloom was this bird going towards morning to the light, just making it through the night. And finding out there were all of these other energies that were supporting its journey to get there. And so it was basically me solving my own dealing with my own demons. And knowing that if I could just get through and find myself at the end of this, that I could get into the light in the morning, that I would be okay, that I had reached the place where I was no longer going to live in the dark. I was going to take some action. And that bird and that passage was about, we do that all the time. All of us have done that at some place in there. So it was just a representation of being so far down in the hole that you're not going to stay there anymore. You've decided, I have to take charge and get out. And that's pretty much what I was doing. And I painted till like 5 in the morning, just like 10 hours, and just fought the battles at the easel, which is not unusual for me to do, which is why the paintings become emotional. It's like I'm processing all the time. I mean, some people do it by walking or riding a bike or playing music, whatever they do. But we all have our own mechanisms. And mine is just walking up to the canvas and trying to get an idea what it looks like. I had no idea. It looked like a bird. Yeah, last thing in my mind I would have thought of. But I know when I look at paintings, I know what the battles were. It's like it is the process that has led me out of it. I can look at it and say, I was there, yes. I remember the battle. I remember how silly the issues were, and that I had magnified them to the place where I was in that depression area. And that has changed with age. I don't go there that often anymore, Yeah, I don't go there anymore. It's called Fiction and Nonfiction. It is an acrylic painting that actually has real string tied on it and across it. And there is it's basically a red painting, and it has like a talesman, an omelet hanging from the strings that I think is in turquoise or gold, yellow, I'm not sure which. And I didn't have this idea when I started it, but again, in the middle of the painting, this whole process started telling me what this painting was about. And then I started going for what colors I would use or how I would modulate that to say this. And it's very difficult sometimes standing by your work at an opening and people come over and say things to you, and they're not being mean, they're not being rude, it's just they say what's on their mind. And sometimes you just have to bite your tongue because you want to respond to that, and you know it's not going to go anywhere, so why bother? It's, it's not productive. But I think it came from standing in a show at one point and watching people approach my work and listening to comments and so forth. And so this painting is about people that go buy paintings and they're attracted out of the public space or the social space, and they get closer to the painting because something is attracting them. And then some people walk over and they look at the name of the piece and the price tag, and then they walk away and quickly. And it's like, our relationship is based upon the price of the painting. You don't have to pay for it to like it, so you can see that relationship cut off for a lot of different reasons. I think, wow, that's really strange. No one was asking you for the money. That's just a price tag. And so I was thinking about that when I was painting. And the last one was about a woman who comes in and she walks up close enough. She's in personal space. And she's looking at the painting and taking her time. And I am the painting. I am watching her look at me. And I'm watching what happens to her face, to her eyes, whether she smiles, whether she's thinking. And I take her through the stages until she actually gets close where she touches the surface. And we're saying something there on a very intimate level. And it doesn't matter what the price is. That's the one that matters. That's the one that matters to me. And she goes, how did he do that? And she's talking about the painting. But it's still that intimate relationship that's going on there. And you can smell her perfume. You can feel her touch. You can see, if her eyeliner's not on right, whatever it is. And she is looking at me exactly that same way, even though I'm a painting. So we are sharing something in a space that is much more emotionally informative and open than, safe space, 5-6 feet. And I just wanted to see what would happen when people read that next to the painting. Only someone bought it really fast, so no one got to read that. So it's online. That's why I put it online. And I've gotten a lot of people that have asked me about that. Other artists saying, God, boy, is that right? Or I never looked at it that way, but I certainly know what you're talking about, or that kind of thing. So it was good to do. It was a good thing for me to do, too. And it's sort of hard to say yes. But I like what you were saying there. It's like you hitting those spots enough times that you know the difference. Like, this one matters. This one's on the money, and everybody else knows it. And if you've had a couple of those hit, and you see them lining up, you're thinking, I might be able to do this. I think I got enough of a hold of this in the way I work that, yeah, I'm a painter. Yeah, no doubt about it. I don't know if you noticed on Fine Art America, there's people write in about your work. They're mainly other artists. And there are a lot of people on there that we have joined Fine Art America when it came out, like in 2007 or something. So we have become old friends and emailing each other, behind the thing. We know each other's lives in many ways and what they're going through. And it's wonderful to have some guy who is such a perfectionist and realist, who does beautiful work. I mean, beautiful work. To look at your work when you're doing abstract and say, my God, you've got design down pat, or God, I don't understand how you can use red that way, or, whatever it is. But it's through fellow artists, more than the public, more than the sales. It's fellow artists that make the difference for me, because they understand the language and the process. And even though I've had a lot of people patting me on the back, it took me a long time to accept it, I think. So can I get you a glass of wine?
Yeah, we can stop.